Hey, America, buckle up because we're diving into the world of Supreme Court rulings and gun control with a case that's got everyone talking United States v. Rahimi. This isn't just another legal battle. It's a case that goes straight to the heart of the Second Amendment and what it means for gun ownership in America. Get ready for historical arguments, passionate opinions, and enough legal jargon to make your head spin. This case is a big deal because it raises questions about how far the government can go in restricting gun ownership while upholding the Second Amendment. It's a debate that's been raging for centuries, and this case has just added more fuel to the fire. So, grab your gavel and your pocket constitution because things are about to get interesting. Now let's break down this legal showdown and see what we can learn. Meet Zacarias Rahimi, a Texas man who found himself at the center of this legal storm. It all started back in 2017 when Rahimi was involved in a series of violent incidents. After a domestic dispute turned physical, he was hit with a restraining order. But things escalated from there. Over a 5-month period, Rahimi was involved in 5 separate shooting incidents. He fired shots at a car after a road rage incident, discharged his gun in a parking lot, and even shot at a house. Not exactly the actions of a responsible gun owner, right? These incidents led to federal charges against Rahimi, including one under a law that prohibits people subject to domestic violence restraining orders from possessing firearms. This is where things get interesting. Rahimi challenged the constitutionality of that law, claiming it violated his Second Amendment rights. And guess what? A lower court actually agreed with him. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals sided with Rahimi, striking down the law that prevented him from owning a gun while under a restraining order. They argued that the law was too broad and infringed on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. The court questioned whether historical precedents supported disarming someone based solely on a restraining order. They felt the law was too far-reaching and could potentially impact people who pose no real threat. This decision sent shockwaves through the legal system and ignited a firestorm of debate. Gun rights advocates celebrated it as a victory for the Second Amendment, while gun control supporters were outraged, fearing it would endanger victims of domestic violence. This set the stage for a showdown in the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, with its 9 justices and their lifetime appointments, decided to take on Rahimi's case. They wanted to settle the debate and provide clarity on this crucial issue. The nation waited with bated breath to see how the highest court would rule. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court reversed the Fifth Circuit's ruling, upholding the federal law prohibiting gun possession by individuals subject to domestic violence restraining orders. They argued that while the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to bear arms, it is not an unlimited right. The court emphasized that the government has a compelling interest in protecting public safety and preventing gun violence. They determined that disarming individuals deemed dangerous due to credible threats of violence, especially domestic violence, fell well within the government's authority. Let's dig deeper into the key points of their decision. Section 5. Historical analogs. Not quite twins. One of the most significant aspects of the Supreme Court's ruling was its emphasis on historical analogs. The court clarified that while historical context is essential when interpreting the Second Amendment, it's not about finding exact historical replicas of modern laws. They introduced the concept of historical analogs, arguing that modern gun restrictions don't need to be identical to those from the past. Instead, they should be analogous, meaning they address similar dangers and concerns. The court stated that the focus should be on the purpose and effect of both historical and modern regulations. This approach allows for a more nuanced understanding of the Second Amendment, acknowledging that the world has changed since the 18th century, and the dangers we face today might require different solutions. Section 6. Reasonable restrictions, a key factor. The Supreme Court also emphasized the importance of reasonable restrictions on gun ownership. They acknowledged that while the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, it doesn't mean that right is absolute. The court reiterated its previous stance that the government can impose certain limitations on gun ownership, as long as those restrictions are reasonable and serve a significant government interest, such as public safety. This part of the ruling is crucial because it recognizes the need for a balance between individual rights and the safety of the community. It acknowledges that the government has a duty to protect its citizens from harm, and that sometimes this duty might require placing limitations on certain rights, including the right to own a firearm. Section 7. The impact on U.S. citizens, a balancing act. The Supreme Court's decision in United States v. Rahimi has far-reaching implications for U.S. citizens. On one hand, it affirms the government's authority to enact reasonable gun control measures to protect public safety. This could lead to stricter background checks, red flag laws, and other measures aimed at keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals. On the other hand, the ruling has sparked concerns among gun rights advocates who fear it could pave the way for more restrictive gun control measures in the future. They worry that the government might use this decision to justify increasingly broad limitations on gun ownership, potentially infringing on the rights of law-abiding citizens. The ruling highlights the ongoing tension between protecting individual rights and ensuring public safety. It underscores the need for a careful and nuanced approach to gun control, one that respects the Second Amendment while also addressing the very real problem of gun violence in America. Section 8. Responsible gun ownership versus public safety. The Rahimi case also brings to light the distinction between responsible gun ownership and the need for public safety. The Second Amendment, as the court emphasized, is not an absolute right. It must be balanced with the government's responsibility to protect its citizens from harm. While many Americans exercise their Second Amendment rights responsibly, using firearms for hunting, sport shooting, or self-defense, the reality is that guns are also used to commit acts of violence. The Rahimi case, stemming from a domestic violence incident, is a stark reminder of this fact. The challenge for lawmakers is to craft policies that respect the rights of responsible gun owners while also addressing the issue of gun violence. This requires careful consideration, open dialogue, and a willingness to find common ground. The Rahimi case is a reminder that this issue is complex and demands a nuanced approach. Section 9. A voice for domestic violence survivors. One of the most significant aspects of the Rahimi case is its impact on domestic violence survivors. The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the law prohibiting gun possession by individuals subject to domestic violence restraining orders is a victory for those who have experienced domestic abuse. This ruling recognizes the very real danger posed by abusers with access to firearms. Studies have shown that domestic violence abusers are 5 times more likely to murder their partners if they have access to a gun. By removing firearms from these situations, the court is taking a stand to protect some of the most vulnerable members of society. This decision sends a clear message that domestic violence is a serious crime and that the justice system is committed to protecting survivors. It acknowledges the importance of taking proactive measures to prevent tragedies and save lives. Section 10. The slippery slope. A cause for concern? The Supreme Court's ruling in United States v. Rahimi has reignited the age-old slippery slope argument in the gun control debate. Some gun rights advocates fear that this decision could set a precedent for increasingly restrictive gun control measures. They worry that the government might use this ruling to justify banning entire categories of firearms or implementing sweeping gun confiscation programs. This fear, while understandable, is not necessarily grounded in the specifics of the ruling. The Supreme Court's decision was narrowly focused on individuals subject to domestic violence restraining orders, a group deemed to pose a significant risk to others. The court did not suggest that this ruling would automatically justify broader gun control measures. However, the debate over the potential for a slippery slope is likely to continue. Section 11. The future of the Second Amendment, a nation divided. The United States v. Rahimi case highlights the deep divisions in American society over the Second Amendment and gun control. The case has sparked passionate arguments on both sides, with no easy answers in sight. The Second Amendment remains a cornerstone of American identity for many, representing freedom, self-reliance, and protection against tyranny. However, the issue of gun violence, particularly mass shootings and domestic violence, continues to plague the nation. Finding a balance between these competing interests is a complex and challenging task. The Rahimi case is just one chapter in the ongoing story of the Second Amendment. As we move forward, it is crucial for all sides to engage in respectful dialogue, Consider evidence-based solutions and strive to find common ground. The future of the Second Amendment and the safety of the nation may depend on it. Stay informed, America, and stay engaged.